A road section of 3,700 miles, 10.5 hours of racing, all the famous circuits of France, and 9 speed hill climbs in the Alps, the Massif Central and the Pyrenees. These were the ingredients of the Tour de France 1964, and the first circuit was the high-speed engine wrecker of Reims. The road section from the start at Lille was almost a formality, little more than an opportunity for everyone to get to know each other. But in most cases, both the names and the faces were familiar. Monte Carlo victor Paddy Hopkirk and the Finnish BMC star Timo Mäkinen, for instance, needed no introduction. Other meetings were more surprising. Fancy running into you here. The field of 117 starters was nothing if not international in every sense. Italy's Alfa Romeos, driven by Blanchet of France and Madame Mandola. From Ford of Dagenham, Vic Elford and David Siegel-Morris. Again Franco-Italian, the great René Trautmann, now with Lancia. And Bernard Constant, the French Jaguar exponent. Swedish-American Bo Ljungfelt and his Mustang, but certainly he's no cowboy, and nor is his teammate Peter Harper. And these three have more in common than good looks. Terry Hunter, Val Perry and Anita Taylor. With them, the still young Swiss veteran of the Triumph team, Jean-Jacques Tunner. And the North Country pair, Bradley and Fiddler. While Dutchman Robbie Slottermacher's partnership with Hunter keeps the Triumph team as typically European as the Tour's ubiquitous organizer Maurice Ulrich. At each circuit, the cars raced in categorized groups for periods of not less than 1 hour. Competition was intense throughout, for the victors of the Tour de France are those who cover the greatest distance in the time available. In the early stages, the Cortinas led, and the Minis set about their crowd-winning giant killer act with zest and abandon. And heads lifted, if not rolled. Come in, number 18, your time is up. As Mabs, Mäkinen and Hopkirk leave the circuit, they reckon they've had their money's worth, and Pauline Mayman is close on their heels. But pace is a two-edged sword, and Buchanan's Cooper has a broken piston. In the second race, the heavy metal entry reads like a zoo catalogue with Jaguar alongside Mustang. And not surprisingly, the Mustangs make the running. Unfortunately, Sir Gawain Bailey's Galaxy suffers a premature eclipse. And the Mustangs gallop home in the order Proctor, Harper, Ljungfelt, the pattern in this class soon established. Race 3 and the smaller Grand Touring category. And here's a bitter setback to the Triumph team's high hopes. Bill Bradley's Spitfire inexplicably holds a piston, and that's that. Meantime, out on the circuit, battle is immediately joined between the other Spitfires and the much-modified and special-bodied French Renault Alpines. Robbie Slottermacher sets the pace. As planned, Tunner follows closely. Anita Taylor, sister of Grand Prix driver Trevor, shows a strong family resemblance. And Slottermacher really has a go. Tunner disposes of Berard's NSU to get at the Alpines. The pits are busy. A broken windscreen here, Another broken heart there. But the struggle between Spitfire and Alpine rages on. At the end of the 2 hours at Reims, the honours are even between what will apparently be the principal contenders in the class. But one thing is clear, the anticipated battle will be fierce. From Reims to Rouen, with a hill climb on the Col de Bramont for good measure on the way. Now there were only 2 Spitfires running, for Valperi and Anita Taylor, with the car entered by Sterling Moss, had run a bearing. The specification of the 2 survivors was virtually that which had run so well earlier in the year at Le Mans, although gearboxes and brakes were exactly as on the showroom models. Slaughtermarker's quite a showroom model himself. The BMC ranks were also depleted, but Paddy Hopkirk was still on the front rank of his race, and on the interesting and quite hilly circuit of Rouen-les-Essarts, the duration was to be 1 hour. At the Virage du Nouveau Monde, the Mini Brigade enjoys itself. The order, Mabs, Mackinnon, Hopkirk. Commentator and crowd love it, as the articulated mini-train finishes Hopkirk, Mackinnon, Mabs. Maurice Henry is happy to wave the flag for them, and anyone else in his extraordinary event. And now only Constance Jaguar is up with the 4 Mustangs and ahead of graders. Bobrovsky's Jaguar makes a discouraging start. Little Ford, Vic Elford's Cortina, and Big Ford, the 3 Mustangs in Alan Mann's official team. Genta's Lancia loses time stationary. Constance Jaguar loses ground at speed. And although the Lancia rejoins, the Italians do not show well in the big touring class, no matter how hard they try. Hazard, having lived up to his name, rejoins, and the 3 Mustangs finish this time Ljungfelt, Proctor, Harbour. In the small GTs, Andrew Hedges MG joins the Spitfire Alpine party. And with the MG leading, Slaughtermarker and Tunner let the opposition make the running for a while. The independent rear suspension of the Spitfire makes Slaughtermarker's skid school experience almost superfluous at Rouen hairpin. But some drivers are by now wishing they'd served an engineering apprenticeship. Tunner, as usual, is fast, neat and tidy. But Robbie Slaughtermarker is determined to make a fight of it all the way. And his relentless pressure on his principal rivals begins to pay off. Andrew Hedges with the MG leads the bigger class, but in front of the stands, Robbie Slaughtermarker again takes the Spitfire into the lead of his class and goes on to lap most of the opposition. Tunner, second in the class. The big GTs make a splendid spectacle at Rouen. It's a battle between Carroll Shelby's Cobras, there's Maurice Trantino leading, and the Ferraris. With Porsche intervention from time to time. And eventually, Trantino won. Le Mans, of course, is a must for this event, with 2 hours of racing on the full 13.4-kilometer circuit in the third stage of the tour. Here, the service crews really go into action, but preceded by a 3-hour road section from Caen, the drivers had to go hard to give the mechanics the time they might need. Apart from the engine stress of the constant circuit work, tires are the principal problem of the tour, with a complete change obviously essential before and after every circuit. The BMC team service the MG while John Sprinsel sits it out. Ray Henderson, Triumph's chief mechanic, leads his team into action, while Turner and Hunter compare notes. Meantime, the outside world and its affairs mean little to those who ride the bandwagon of the Tour de France. Le Mans is sufficiently wide to allow the whole touring category a single mass start. There they go, from Mustangs to Minis. A treble Citroën Presse, of course. What must be one of the most famous clocks in Europe shows 8 minutes to go to the GT start. Just time for a brief word or two. The GTO Ferraris of Tavano and Bianchi alongside Trent's Cobra. Slaughtermarker quickly settles down, as he did in the 24-hour race. Turner is not far behind. But others are less well placed. This Swiss-driven Ferrari was caught with the wrong tyres on, a clear demonstration of the necessity for efficient planning and service during the tour. Robbie Slaughtermarker laps steadily at 5 minutes 7 seconds, 98 miles an hour. The Spitfires achieve 7,000 RPM in top gear, just 125 miles an hour on their straights. And their performance is now causing a stir amongst the continental opposition. Lucien Bianchi is now in a fierce Ferrari fight with Tavano and Guichet, but this bodywork damage cost him time. By the way, why do people have time on their hands when their legs are so much more interesting? Well, some people's legs anyway. Still, the Spitfires and Alpines keep up their private struggle, and still more of the competitors become spectators. But here's the incident which eliminated David Piper and the British-entered Maranello concessionaires Ferrari. They use an enforced pit stop to top up on fuel and are disqualified on the spot. Slottermacher gets a second off on this lap. The MG goes well. But the battle for the lead becomes an all-Ferrari affair as one by one the Cobras fall by the way. Lucia Bianchi tries desperately to catch Guichet in the closing minutes. But it's the Spitfires who do as well as anyone. Slottermacher moving up to third place overall on handicap. Tunner's co-driver Gretiner acts as timekeeper, and as the 2 hours expire, once again the Triumph Spitfires have distinguished themselves at Le Mans. Yet again, poor Tavano's hopes of finishing a tour go up, literally in smoke. Its main claim to distinction is its name and the local product. It's a featureless airfield. The company, however, is good, and Tunner shares front rank with a Belgian Elan as well as the leading Alpine. From the start, the Swiss goes very well once again. And despite its lack of glamour, the Cognac circuit proves an interesting test of road holding. At the chicane, the leaders in the class, Alpine, Spitfire and Lotus, while this DKW enlivens the proceedings by sprinkling fuel on the corners. Here's the unhappy Levasseur in further trouble with his Renault. And another Alpine setback when Ferret comes into the pit with a rear tyre flat. Out on the circuit, Tunner finds himself refreshingly alone. Ferret tries hard, very hard, to catch up. But the checkered flag intervenes, and Cognac has appropriately added spirit to the Spitfire team's efforts. Now it's Slottermacher's turn, and Andrew Hedges' MG and Mauro Bianchi's Alpine are once again his running mates. In very unpleasant conditions, the Dutchman characteristically goes harder than ever, and after an hour on the Cognac, so to speak, he emerges second overall on handicap with Tunner third. And so ends the third dramatic stage of the tour, with 3 to go. Although the event is decided on the circuits and hill climbs, the road sections of the tour call for competent teamwork and are by no means devoid of hazard. René Trutman's Lancia, for instance, had been amongst the road section casualties. The BMC team had now lost Rano Altonen's 1300 Cooper S, and Wadsworth Cooper was disposing of more oil than petrol. The Alfred Siegel Morris Cortina was running very well, unlike most of its teammates. But of the Jaguars, only Bernard Constance was justifying the car's former reputation in this event, and this could scarcely hope to beat the Mustangs, provided the American cars held together. However, one of the attractions of the Tour de France is that the speedy publication of results to date enables the drivers to know where they stand, and consequently, there is a certain amount of room for tactical maneuver. The hill climb of the Col d'Aubisque in the Pyrenees came early on the fourth stage. Here, both Mackinnon and Hopkirk improved on their handicap position. Pauline Mayman climbed well, but Jeff Mabbs fell right back with loss of power, which was to cause his eventual retirement. The appearance of the French cars sends the highly partisan local enthusiasts into ecstasies. And Constant gained ground here over the Mustangs, the Jaguars on the whole showing better in the mountains than on the circuits. Here's Bo Jungfeld's Mustang, quickest of the four on the Col, but you'll notice the suspension appears rather soft. Number 83, Peter Proctor. There's Greda. And Peter Harper's Mustang using all the road. The Renault Alpines. That was Tunner and Gretiner. And here's Robbie Slottermarker and Terry Hunter. But observe the popular reaction to local lad Pierre Jallet. Klaas has been having an adventurous ride with his Porsche and is a huge success. The Ferraris, of course, look and sound magnificent. Pau, one of the classic circuits of France, just over 1.5 miles to the lap and a reel round the houses. Duration, 1 hour. While the cars were climbing the cols of Aubisque and Tourmalet in the very early morning, the circuit was prepared. And this is a mini circuit, if ever there was one. Paddy Hopkirk leads Mackinnon. Wadsworth struggles on with his ailing Cooper, and all through the field there are strangely assorted struggles wheel to wheel. The elegance of Poe adds grace to the event. The luncheon marquee is excellent, and the whole episode is very much to the taste of Andrew Hedges. To the taste, too, of the Mustang riders, though it will be interesting to see how they go on this tight circuit. In fact, one of them doesn't, and it's Bo Jungfeld. The battery trouble, which has already cost him a penalty, this time leads to disqualification, though no one seemed quite sure why. The other three Mustangs indulged themselves in a little formation work. Number 38 there is Vic Elford's Cortina, now the sole survivor and drawing away from Masuero's Alpha. Jungfeld gets his run at Poe, but it's strictly for fun and perhaps not all that amusing. And Maurice Henry gets the most enthusiastic crowd reaction to date. Now the weather plays a dirty trick on the GT drivers. No circuit is pleasant in the rain, but Poe becomes a nightmare. Nevertheless, once again, it's Guichet out in front. For Robbie Slottermacher, who started and runs Holland's leading skid school, this seems like a heaven-sent opportunity to do a commercial. Both he and Tunner profit by the appalling conditions and the Spitfire's road holding. The Spitfires run in company, and Tunner could be quite glad to have someone to show him the way, as bad light fails to stop play. This time, Bianchi beats Guichet in the Ferrari duel, and the two Spitfires are beaten by Ferre's Alpine, which is given an incredible third place on scratch. The night section which followed Poe entailed heavy casualties in retirements and loss of time. Harper and Proctor refused the road until they got road tires and were clean, while Grader, who didn't, lost 7 minutes. Vic Elford and David Siegel Morris had made no mistake, but Madame Texier's Jaguar had lost time, and Andrew Hedges' MG and Ferre's Alpine had both retired. Albi, the 2¼ mile circuit on which BRM scored their first victory. On the Tour, it was preceded by the 12-mile hill climb of the Col de Minière, on which Terry Hunter, driving Slottermacher's car, made best performance on handicap. Amongst the big tourers, the three Mustangs, as usual, led Constant's Jaguar and Elford's Cortina, while Peter Proctor setting the pace and Harper was leading Grader. The Mustangs were now in a very unassailable position, with 3 still running. Between the races, some light entertainment, soon to be further enlivened. For the former Annie Swasbo, now Annie Montague, was back with her former Triumph teammates, her Ferrari having been mysteriously grouped with the small GTs. The resultant lapping was doubtless good for Annie's morale, but Tunner remained unperturbed and efficient. In the second section of the GT race, Annie's husband was in dead trouble with his Ferrari. He had Slottermacher for company. Finally, they got the Ferrari started. And Monsieur Montague does his warming up lap in the nick of time. At Albi, the Porsches gave the Ferraris an early run. Now, having lost time during the previous night section after an unfortunate fuel shortage, Robbie Slottermacher had dropped to second place in the class behind his teammate Tunner. He resolved to make up the arrears. In his enthusiasm, Slottermacher actually got up amongst the Ferraris. And Robbie won at Albi on handicap. A great drive this by the Flying Dutchman. Proof positive that, as many cars in the field began to fail, the Spitfire was running better than ever. The circuit of the Auvergne at Clermont-Ferrand, 5 miles to the lap, and an hour and a half's racing on the fast and difficult mountain course. Constance Jaguar, refusing to give up, momentarily led the Mustangs, and Elford now leading overall on handicap. Now misfortune struck at the Minis. Pauline Mayman, Mackinnon, Lalonde and Wadsworth all in trouble, while Harper's and Proctor's Mustangs were slowed with chassis cracks. With one circuit and 4 hill climbs to go, the highly tuned GT cars were still a long way from home. Tunner, now leading the class, increased his personal effort to lead Slottermacher on the circuit. And there was further trouble for the Alpines. But once again, Robbie Slaughtermarker got out in front, with his Swiss teammate hanging on. And again, Robbie Slaughtermarker and the Spitfire won the race on handicap. Now, the Triumph team mechanics realize the critical importance of the final stage and scurry off for their long drive through the Alps into Italy and back. Monza, and the last race of the tour, an hour and a half on the fast 3-mile road circuit. Here, the challenge of the Renault Alpines against the Spitfires receives its final coup de grace. Mauro Bianchi's Alpine blows up in a big way. And Robbie Slaughtermarker gets the most significant and heartless signal of the event. In fact, it has been a close call, for Tunner and Gretner have gone out too when still leading the class on the hill climb of Mont Ventoux. Bianchi's Ferrari leads again, and an enterprising local photographer solves the problem of how to get the competitors to pay for the prints. Meantime, our film camera continues to record the stars in action. The seconds tick by towards the finish of the last race. And now, Robbie Slaughtermarker knows that there are but 3 hill climbs between him and a major international success. The Col de Turigny, the famous 7-mile serpentine climb in the Maritime Alps. Here's Pauline Mayman making best handicap performance of the tourers. But, alas for BMC, she was almost the sole surviving Mini in a field now drastically reduced. Only 17 of the Grand Touring category were to see the final checkered flag. The Col de Bryce, and the last of the Tour's 17 tests. This time, Pauline Mayman was second on handicap, but Vic Elford's handicap victory overall was now assured. And Peter Proctor knew that the touring car category was his. Robbie Slaughtermarker and Terry Hunter rolled the Spitfire happily on towards Nice, and the tour assumes almost a carnival atmosphere as Journey's End is approached. At the final control, excited chaos. But there's still the last happy task for the servicing crews. Perhaps the only time when car washing is fun. The co-driver must live up to his name on the tour, so Terry Hunter may well look tired but happy. And for Robbie Slaughtermarker, who takes his driving intensely seriously, these are moments to be savoured. To Bianchi and Berger, all credit for their outright GT scratch victory, and to Boucher and Linger for winning the handicap. Peter Proctor and Andrew Kahn and Vic Elford and David Siegel-Morris share the touring car victories. But Robbie Slaughtermarker of Holland and Terry Hunter of Great Britain, with their Triumph Spitfire, score success in the 1964 Tour de France well worthy of their team's long-standing tradition in world international motorsport.